Writing systems are weird. I mean, who needs them, right? You might be reading the letters that appear on screen right now and registering them as words that are joined together to form sentences, but why bother with such trivialities? The Native American tribes of Canada and the United States got by just fine without them for millennia, and so did thousands of other humans and non-humans that have passed from the expanses of this tiny planet into the pages of recorded history or to the dust of forgotten burial sites. For all we know, aliens, far more intelligent than us, might not even have a need for a writing system, perhaps being able to instantly transmit copious amounts of information to each other's massive brains telepathically into central warehouses of common data compiled by the elders of each alien tribe. But by common consensus amongst the human community, the written word, although possibly having somewhat contributed to the decay of that fragile thing we call memory, has not only given us the means whereby to communicate from great distances, make previous knowledge readily available to the erudite and to the common man alike, and allow for trade in the sciences, both key ingredients of great civilizations, to flourish, but it has also produced and preserved some of the greatest artistic feats that posterity has had the pleasure of enjoying from the comfort of their own screens. And while every writing system might begin with trade or religion, oral epics and tales carrying a plethora of embellishments and alterations made by each subsequent bard that would recount them over the centuries would eventually come to be written down and assume a definitive and authoritative form, as typified by works such as the Homeric eposes or the Mahabharata of the Hindus. And who can ever claim to know how many world epics and grand tales of tribes, gods, and heroes were lost to humanity due to them never being set to writing? But writing is an art, and like any art, it must be taught, learned, and practiced so as to be preserved. Writing systems can be lost in the mists of time, and lie as dormant beasts beneath the ruins of the society that birthed them. With enough time, luck, and effort, their lost arcane arts can be rediscovered centuries later by a different group of people who will also one day meet their end alongside their alphabet in the ever-recurring cycle of civilizational samsara. Such was the case, for instance, with the Mayas of Mesoamerica, whose peculiar glyphs were largely deciphered in the middle of the 20th century and their mystery is in the process of being solved. Some of the ancient magic might be lost in the process, but such is the sacrifice we have to make in the altar of science. In other altars, called Ushnu, farther to the south of the great Mayan civilization, in the Andes mountain range of modern-day Peru, long before most great civilizations we've come to know ever sprung up, Andean camelid herders were giving form to a groundbreaking way to record information, possibly to keep track of their alpaca and llama herds, that were resemble in substance and yet greatly differ in form from the great alphabets and writing systems of other societies. The enigmatic quipus were thus born. Quipu in the Quechua language means knot, while amongst the Aymara speakers the device is known as chino. These strange and ancient record-keeping knots, most famously employed by the Inca Empire of South America yet existing long before it, have fascinated the historical, archaeological, and scholarly community for many, many years. What were they? How were they used? And why are they so intriguing? Well, the quipus, as their name implies, were exactly that. A bunch of knots. A number of ropes made from cotton fibers or camelid fur in various shapes and colors and sizes would be suspended vertically from a main horizontal rope. These ropes and their knots would each denote different things depending on their composition and appearance, and were thus employed to record various types of information. In the time of the Incas, a type of specialized quipu scribe or accountant known as quipucamayok would have to decode the information registered on the quipu and relay it to his unlettered or unknotted superiors. Now I know what you're thinking. I've played Death Stranding and Amelie had a quipu. Well, yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. There are various theories on what sort of information quipu actually registered, and I think it's plausible that all theories are in fact correct. It seems like the quipus were a cure-all approach to successfully transcribing pretty much everything into ropes and knots, from music and history to censuses, words, and literature. We know that the people of the Andes both understood the concept of zero and utilized the decimal system to make calculations, and the tallying of, for instance, the individual number of items in a royal storehouse would be recorded in a quipu. However, I should note that quipus were never used as a substitute for calculators, and instead the Inca used a grid-based abacus known as a yupana for that very purpose. But even concerning this instrument's usage, things get a little cloudy. We're not actually 100% sure whether the yupanas were purely used for counting or had other supplementary uses, whether ceremonial, architectural, decorational, or recreational. In the 1615 chronicle, El Primer Nueva Crónica y Buen Gobierno, written by the Quechua nobleman Felipe Guamán Poma de Ayala, a yupana board is depicted behind the Quipucamayok that follows the Fibonacci number sequence in which each subsequent number is the sum of the two numbers preceding it. The Incas might have therefore used it to make certain types of calculations required to carry out efficient statecraft and engineering projects, or the depicted yupana in Ayala's illustration might have simply been a special type of yupana. Some researchers have suggested that, just like the quipus, there might have been a number of yupanas for different uses, and that some might even have been board games. But even though we're not entirely sure, certainly at the very least most of them must have been used for counting as their name implies, since yupai is the verb to count in Quechua. Grains and pebbles of different sizes and colors were placed in different positions and grades to make calculations, whose results would be recorded with quipus. And while many previously thought of quipus as something more akin to memory joggers or mnemonic devices, new evidence has come out that points to the fact that at least not all quipus were purely semasiographic, and that a number of them may have actually employed a logosyllabic system, much like in the case of Japanese. In Japanese, the two native kana scripts and kanji, i.e. the Chinese ideograms, are used in conjunction to form sentences. The kanji represent entire words or ideas, hence the word ideogram, and each kana character represents a sound or syllable that doesn't necessarily have any specific meaning in and of itself, but can be combined with other kana or kanji to form words and sentences. Now, even though the vast majority of quipus were actually destroyed by the Spaniards after they had outlived their usefulness, since they didn't much care for learning their art, and Quipucamayaks and the common people alike were solely forced into learning the Latin alphabet and the Spanish language, the evidence at hand suggests that there might be a fully functional hybrid system of both tactile and visual communication, something akin to Braille but with extra steps and ropes, that functioned in much the same way as other currently used writing systems but used during the time of the Incas and possibly long before them. Now, how cool is that? Another specialty of the Andean peoples, besides tying stuff up, has long been their textiles. Textiles were an important part of social life that didn't have a purely utilitarian or decorative function, but were rather used to denote things like social rank, tribe, and place of origin. Geometric patterns in ancient Andean textiles and pottery called tocapu might have had a more meaningful usage. There hasn't been nearly as much progress made in the discovery of the hidden significance of tocapus as in the deciphering of the quipus, but some researchers hypothesize that the tocapu patterns are actually an undeciphered form of logographic or phonetic writing that might have been used alongside quipus to impart certain types of information without the need of the specialized quipucamayoks that could perhaps be read even by the average layman. Think about it. We know so little about the pre-Hispanic Andean civilizations because of how much the Spanish conquerors destroyed. Of course, the arts and the civilization of a specific nation aren't always valued by outsiders who perceive themselves in their myths as superior, necessarily so. The Taliban blew up the ancient Buddhist statues of Afghanistan, heretical texts were erased from the face of the earth by ancient Christian leaders, and many marvels and cultural mediocrities alike perished, forlorn and forgotten, at the hands of time and abandonment. Such is the mercilessness of natural selection, but thankfully for us curious folk, not everything is lost irrevocably, and anything that archaeologists and specialists have managed to salvage from the pit of oblivion and revive for our viewing pleasure is simply wonderful and inspiring. And hey, maybe we'll have largely deciphered the enigmas of the quipus and tocapus until the close of the century, since progress is rapidly being made. Now, a few curious questions arise from all this. What if other civilizations had come up with a unique method to keep records and record stuff that has not come down to us? Or the mystical nature of their peculiar script simply eludes us to this day? Could they have systems of communication similar to quipus that have failed to live on? And could transcribing epic poetry like Homer or Thucydides' historical work in a quipu format? Could quipus change the way literature is experienced forever if their hidden art is revived, as a 3D quote-unquote writing system knocks on our doorstep? Does this get any closer to Yukio Mishima's ideal of uniting art and action, the physical and the mental realms? In all honesty, I don't really know. Only time can tell. And according to the Andean people, the future is behind us, since it is something we cannot see, and the past is in front of us, something we have already faced, while time, as in many ancient pagan cultures, is viewed as cyclical. So while we might have lived the same events again and the same discoveries are just waiting to be made time and time again, let us slowly and courageously turn behind us as the world runs its course. Maybe something interesting is waiting up ahead. Hey, maybe another Locotomistics video or project. We'll see. Anyways, that was it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more. This has been Jack Locotomy, and as always, remember to locotomysticize your senses.